So just to recap, you have 2.5 minutes for your matches, and during your official competition, you will have 3 official matches and 1 practice match. Of course, during the remote season, your team will be recording your robot game matches, and your coach will be sending it to referees through a special online platform. We're going to talk more about how you're going to be recording your matches in a bit. So the highest score you achieve in your 3 official matches determines where you rank in the robot game high score list. Remember, your ranking in the robot game high score list is 25% of your overall ranking for your competition. And the second highest score is used for tie breaking in case there is a tie. So do as well as you can for all 3 of your matches. They mentioned that the most important document that you'll need is the robot game rulebook. The robot game rulebook, it tells you exactly how your field should be set up, how many points each mission scores, and also what the rules of the game are. It's really important that you know the robot game rulebook from front to back because we've seen a lot of teams lose points at the last minute because of these very small rules that they didn't quite go over. So we're going to go over a couple of commonly used rules, but definitely take time out of your meetings to go over the rulebook as a team. There's actually another reason that knowing the rules is really important. Just like your judges, FLL referees are all volunteers. They make their best effort to learn and enforce the robot game rules, but they have much less experience than you do with the game. Every so often, a referee might make a mistake, and that's okay. All you have to do is let them know which rule you think they missed, and they will help you fix your score. Finally, there's one more document that affects the rules. Has anybody checked the challenge updates yet? Because the challenge updates, they contain important information that clarifies the rules, and it also closes any loopholes. There are already a couple of updates that might be important to the missions that you're working on, so don't forget to check it regularly. You can also find it at firstlegoleague.org/season. So let's go over the essential robot rules that you should know. As many of you have already read, your robot can only be made out of Lego building pieces. That means you can use any type of Lego brick, plates, axles, gears. If you have Legos at home, you can use your Lego minifigs, anything from all the different sets that are available. You can use it on your robot. You can even use Lego string and Lego tubing. I have had some people ask if they can use their Lego water bottle or their Lego watch, but unfortunately, those don't count as building pieces. And as we're going through these rules, you'll see this little code that says RO1 in parentheses, or you'll see like RO3. Those are the codes that you can refer to inside of your robot game rulebook to see the exact wording of the rules that we're talking about. Another super important rule to know is that all of your programs must be loaded onto your robot's controller. If you haven't participated in First LEGO League in previous years, you should know that the controller is basically the brain of the robot. Whether you're using the new Spike Prime kit, EV3, or any of the LEGO robot kits, you can only have one brain per robot. And once you've loaded your program files onto this brain, you should be able to use the robot by itself without using Bluetooth, without using a tablet or a computer that's attached to it. This is called having an autonomous robot. Now, there are many other rules to know about, but there is one big loophole that many teams don't know about. If you read the rulebook closely, you'll see that it refers to quote unquote your robot and what your robot needs to do before, during, and after a match. But there really aren't any rules about what happens between matches. Everyone knows that you can change your code or switch out Lego pieces, but did you know that you can just switch out your robot altogether? If your team builds 3 completely separate robots, you can have a different robot show up at each match. For teams that are working remotely this year, building multiple robots might be a strategy to consider. Now, when it comes to gameplay rules, I wanted to share some that every team should know regardless of which missions you tackle. Back to what we were talking about with home and launch. If you participated in First LEGO League last year, you'll remember that home and launch were two completely separate areas. But be careful because home is different now. It's the boot shape that's formed by the space off of the mat and the launch area. During the match, home is the only place where you're allowed to touch anything without penalized. This means you can't reset missions, you can't fix missions, even if it gets accidentally knocked over. Launch is the only place that you can put your robot before it runs any program. Because it's part of home, you can put any of your attachments or extra Lego pieces in launch. But if you want to save some space, you definitely want to put them off of the mat instead. As mentioned in the introduction video, there are a couple of steps that you'll need to take before you start a match. You'll need to review the rules behind each step and know them well for the competition. For the veteran teams in the audience, notice that there is no longer a height limit for your robot when you set it up in launch. And as always, there's always going to be times when your robot accidentally gets stuck on the field, especially when it's trying to lift something or it runs into a wall. Just make sure that you stop the robot by pressing the back button and then carry it back home so that you can set it up for launch again. There's no other place that you can put your robot after you've stopped it aside from home. So you can't adjust it and then start the program again. You have to bring it back for relaunch. Another common situation that you might run into is your robot accidentally losing its quote unquote cargo. So in this example, this robot is trying to bring a bunch of blocks to the boccia frame, but one of its wheels gets caught and it turns in the wrong direction and it spills all of its cubes onto the mat. So what would happen to the cubes in this case? It depends. So if the robot lost the cubes all the way out in the mat, unfortunately, it will not be able to bring it back to home. But if some of the cubes were only halfway out of home, then there is a way for it to take some of the cubes back. Review Rules 17, 18, and 19 carefully if you have any cargo that you're going to be carrying. Now, in both of the situations that we've seen, there are ways to lose precision tokens. Every match, you start off with 6 of these precision tokens, and each time you lose a precision token, you'll lose a number of points. If you look closely, you'll see that the first 2 precision tokens, 5 and 6 over here, they're worth 15 points each. The next 2 are worth 10 points, and the last 2 that you lose are worth 5 points each. So in total, you start off with 60 points worth of precision tokens. That's a lot of points. 60 points is the equivalent of 2 to 3 missions. What I'm trying to say is that you want to lose as few of these tokens as possible. You might have seen teams competing with really big, complicated robots, but the real secret to success is building a reliable robot. Aim to complete a couple of missions with close to a 100% success rate rather than trying more missions that only work 50% of the time. So now that we've got the gameplay down, let's talk about how you're going to be recording the robot games. Just a disclaimer before we start talking about it, while we do have the guidelines for recording videos, some of the instructions around submitting those videos have not been finalized yet. And that's because the platform has not been launched just yet. So I'll let you know when I'm giving you incomplete information, but we'll be hosting a full training for the robot game recordings in probably January of 2021. If you haven't seen the video recording guidelines yet, you can access the document through your First Inspires dashboard. Only registered coaches and administrators are able to access it. But it's 2 pages and it gives you detailed instructions on what needs to be included in your recordings. In general, you're going to need to find a camera angle that shows most of the missions that you'll be attempting. Unlike all the videos that you might have seen on YouTube, you're not going to be following your robot with your camera. Instead, your camera will be stationary for the entire 2.5 minutes. Since team members will be moving around in the west and the south ends of the field, the camera person should not be positioned in those areas. There are a couple of angles that could work, but I wanted to show you the two that I think will be common. The first angle is for teams that are attempting missions on the far end of the mat. From here, you can see that the robot can pass under the pull-up bar, and you can also see it dance at the end. The camera person would need to stay a good distance away from the field in case teams need to move around or pick up their robot on the field. But otherwise, this is a good angle to see all the missions. I have a video for you for a second angle, and thankfully I don't need audio for any of this. So this is a robot game run that a team from, I think, Norway submitted. And this is the most common angle that I see teams are using right now. So in this angle, you're clearly able to see the robot pass under the pull-up bar and dance. The pull-up bar is right here. The dancing would be closer to you. Since this team is not attempting any missions at the far end of the mat, it's actually okay if the camera doesn't show the very end of the table. I've muted the audio here, but in your video, you can talk while you're recording and describe what the robot is doing to help referees follow the action. So don't worry if you don't get the recording completely right the first time. While we're not certain yet, it seems like you'll be able to record your robot game runs as many times as you like and then submit the best ones. The only restrictions that I know about so far is that your recordings must all be done on the same day. And remember, if you build a reliable robot, you won't be relying on that 1 in 100 chance that all of your missions get recorded well. So I'm going to leave this on just for a little bit because at the end, you're going to see that not only do they show the field with all the completed missions, but the coach also zooms in on each one of the missions to show you what state it's in so that referees can properly score things. What they're doing right now is transporting a cargo full of health packs. And if that cargo were to not fall in the right place, they would have to refer to one of the rules to see whether or not they could get it back. But this is essentially what a robot game looks like if you haven't started doing your robot games just yet. For the most part, we do see that teams focus on one half of the mat just because it takes so long to get to the other side of the mat. So if you're doing 3 to 5 missions on the closer half of the mat, you're doing really, really well. Right here, you can see that they've gone under the pull-up bar, which is something that you score the referee scores as soon as they see it. They actually time the robot dance so that it'll continue dancing as soon as the clock hits 0. So the round has ended, and you're going to see the coach go up to the robot to show that it's over the dancing area. And then you're going to see the boccia frame, as well as all of the other missions they completed. They completed quite a few missions. I personally didn't score this, so I don't know how many points they scored. But it was a very clean run, and they got everything done the way that they wanted to. So this is what you're going to be doing while you're filming your run as well. I would recommend that you practice filming your run even when you're just practicing, just so you know where to hold the camera and what angles you'll need in order to show that you've accomplished these missions. For example, showing that the pointer was at yellow there. Great. So if you go to the slideshow, you'll be able to review this video on your own as well. Finally, as always, I want to go over some resources that I and other coaches have found to be really helpful. I added the Chrome Remote Desktop as one of the resources because we're seeing that schools are starting to consider shutting down again. And I know that working on the robot together as a team has already been quite a challenge this year for many of you. So the Chrome Remote Desktop, it's a very powerful tool. So if you are a student, please ask your coach or an adult before you install this program. Basically, what Chrome Remote Desktop does is it allows you to program with your teammates in real time. It allows other people to connect to your computer and use your cursor. So if your teammate is connected to your computer, it's almost like having them sitting next to you and using your mouse to move your cursor around. If you were to have your EV3 programming open at the same time, they can actually use the cursor to drag and drop blocks on your screen, and you would be able to see that happening. There are a couple of ways that you can set this up. Your coach could be the person that everybody connects to, or students might be able to connect to each other if that's okay with your school. But definitely check out the link on the bottom of this slide before you decide whether or not you're going to install this. Another really cool way to collaborate remotely is to just share ideas that you see on YouTube. It's completely okay to see something cool in a video and use it as inspiration for your own design. You'll probably even improve on the idea. This season, a lot more teams are making tutorials and sharing their robot games online. You can find recent videos by just searching for FLL and then changing the filter to this week or this month. You could also sort by upload date if you want to see a list of all of the videos about FLL. Of course, like with all things on the internet, it's helpful to think critically about the videos that you watch. You'll notice that almost nobody uploads a video where they mess up. And some videos might look perfect, but it's actually obvious that they're stitched together from 10 different tries. So you'll have to use your own trial and error skills to figure out which designs are reliable and which ones just kind of look cool and produce big numbers. I wanted to leave you all today with a list of videos and channels that I thought were really good sources of inspiration. I had a lot of fun seeing which missions teams were going for and what paths their robots were taking. So I hope you'll find some of these videos helpful as well.